All right, I'm apparently live. How's everything? How's everybody doing today? Thanks so much for joining me. Just want to make sure I got this all. First things first, want to make sure that you can actually hear me. I know I've had issues in the past. I'm going to put on my glasses here. Um, all right, we're. Let me just give me a big notification here. Let me know if you can hear me. Uh, for some reason, let me bring my mic in a little bit closer. Um, just going to wait until get some comments about whether you can hear me or not. Thank you for joining this YouTube live. Anything? Got some people in the chat right now. You guys got me? Let's see it. Nothing yet. We can hear you. Great. All right. That's good to hear. Well, thanks for tuning in on a Thursday morning. Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. I'm going to get away for the weekend, watch the game. I don't know how in tune or intense I'll be in watching the game. Um, okay, great. The flu's kicking your butt. You know what, man? I had something too that just kind of dragged on and on and on, and I'm feeling a lot better now. So I'm happy about that, and thank you for tuning in here. Um, I was on KNBR this morning, and they asked me the question, who do you think John and Kyle and the 49ers are rooting for? Or rooting for is probably the wrong term. Who do you think they want to see win this game? And my thought would be, I think it's pretty easy. I think they want the Chiefs to win. And the reason would be because the Chiefs have already had the upper hand on the 49ers twice. Uh, and the Chiefs have kind of established themselves in a whole different district than the rest of the NFL. And so rather than see another team or a team in the NFC then rise atop the NFL, I think the 49ers would rather just have one team in essence they're looking up to than to have the Eagles, an NFC rival, for lack of a better term, even though they didn't play each other this season and aren't scheduled to play next season either. I think the 49ers would rather see the Chiefs kind of remain at the top and remain the standard rather than see another team that they've been competing against in the Eagles go over the Chiefs. So that would be my thought. How about your thoughts? What do you think? Who do you want to see win this game? And the old Christian McCaffrey line, we're not going to fall for that one. Can't do the I hope they both lose. That's not how it works. Got to get off the fence. Got to pick a side. Who's it going to be? When I watch a game, unless I go into the game with someone, yeah, hit the like button. Thank you. When I go into a game, unless I know people personally on either of the teams, I typically just watch to watch. And then over the course of the game, like to see how things develop. And, probably always rooting for a close game unless I have a vested interest in the game. So I don't know. My guess is, or my thought would be, because I know more people over at the Eagles than with the Chiefs, probably be, kind of quietly rooting for the Eagles, I guess. Like to see Vic Fangio get a Super Bowl ring. I've told this story. So Vic Fangio, last time I saw him was in Canton, Ohio for the Hall of Fame, the induction ceremony. So that would have been in August. So forget what day exactly it was, but let's just say I think it was probably 2 weeks into training camp. Well, probably would have been, yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks into training camp. And a lot of former 49ers were in attendance to support Patrick Willis going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So I did see Vic Fangio. He's a great guy, just a no nonsense kind of guy. And I said, "How are things going?" Now, this was his first training camp as a defense coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. And he looked at me, he goes, "Our defense is not very good." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I kind of filed that away. And I thought, I bet his defense is a lot better than he's leading on. Well, many, many months later, the Eagles are in the Super Bowl in large part because of their defense. Yes, Saquon Barkley gets all the headlines, but the job that Vic Fangio has done as a defense coordinator of the Eagles cannot be undersold, underestimated. And when you think about it, as far as these two defensive coordinators, Vic Fangio and Steve Spagnuolo, uh, they do it in different ways. Vic Fangio's defense so buttoned up, so exact, so precise, so detailed, and well prepared. Obviously, they don't do anything crazy, but just sound in everything they do. Don't give up the big plays, all of that. And then you have the Chiefs defense where a lot of talent. They put a lot of resources into their defense. They have a very good defense, obviously, as well, but they're more freewheeling. The amount of different blitz packages and pressures that they dial up through the course of the game, especially in the fourth quarter. That's when Spagnuolo really just kind of dials it up and comes up with it's just seemingly the right call at the right time, catches teams off balance. Not to bring back any bad memories, but the Super Bowl, for instance, the pressures that he dialed up at the right time just caught the 49ers a tick slow, created, for whatever reason, confusion on the offensive line. Of course, that big play where 49ers right guard did not block Chris Jones, left him a free run at the quarterback. That was a huge play in overtime. So anyway, that's kind of my thought about the Super Bowl. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a close game. Kansas City doesn't seem to blow anybody out. They generally play close games. They don't score a whole lot, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you would think from a team where Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback. And, even though his regular season numbers weren't great, no one will talk about Patrick Mahomes as an MVP candidate, clearly. But you still put him at the top of the list when it comes to all NFL players. At least I think that's the consensus around the league. Okay, so enough talking about the Eagles and the Chiefs, unless you want to talk about it more. Tonight's NFL honors, right? I think it is. So, full disclosure, we've had the Hall of Fame meeting. So there's 49 voters for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm one of them. And we had our meeting. And this year, I have no idea who's going in. They did not reveal the vote to us after we had our meeting. And so I don't know. When I think when the world finds out will be when I find out, maybe a heads up a few minutes beforehand, but I don't know how it's going to go. If I were to, well, I shouldn't make too much of a guess, but I would say of the modern era people, um, the name that everybody's going to be talking about is Eli Manning, whether he makes it or not. And I know the feedback I've gotten from 49er fans is no, he shouldn't. So we'll see on that. If I were to say who I think would make it, usually there's 5. This year they've changed the voting for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now I don't think there will be 5 modern era people getting in. I think it'll be more. Now I'll just try to quickly explain this. And by the way, thanks for tuning in to this YouTube live. And I'll hit everything you guys want to talk about here. We'll see how long I stay. But for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it used to be basically 5 modern era guys would get in every year. Modern era guys are players whose careers ended 20 or fewer years ago. So in the past, you'd vote. There'd be the final 15, whittle it down to 10, whittle it down to 5, and then those 5 would get in. This year they changed it so that it's different, where we went 15 to 10 to 7, and then every voter, myself included, vote for 5 of the 7, and then only the people who get 80% or more of the vote are Hall of Famers. So there can be anywhere from 3 to 5 modern era people. I think there'll be 3 or 4. We'll see who it is. Who are some of the names to watch? I would think Antonio Gates, Adam Vinatieri, Luke Kuechly, Jared Allen, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, Willie Anderson, Darren Woodson, Eric Allen, who else? Terrell Suggs. So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes about. And I just immediately see in the comments, if Eli gets in the Hall of Fame, then Jim Plunkett should be in. I kind of agree with that. What distinguishes both of those men is that, they didn't put up great numbers, although Eli, just because of the way the game has changed, Eli's top 10, top 12, I think, in yards passing and touchdowns and all that, also top 12 in interceptions. But what distinguishes them is 2 Super Bowl victories as starting quarterback. Does Roger Craig have to die before they let him in the Hall of Fame? I don't know I think, I've had this conversation with people as far as, why isn't Roger Craig in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? And I think the thing that has hurt him is just the lack of the raw numbers. It's, where does he rank in all-time rushing yards? Even where does he rank in all-time, receptions and receiving yards? I would stress the pioneer that he was, as far as, becoming really the first guy. Well, obviously the first guy to do the 1,000, and how only 2 people have done that since, Marshall Faulk and Christian McCaffrey. So I was hoping, I was confident, cautiously optimistic. Let's put it that way. After stuff I'd heard last year, I was cautiously optimistic that this was going to be his year, but it wasn't. The seniors committee meets every year. They come up with 3 seniors finalists. And this year, those seniors finalists were, Maxie Bond, an old-time linebacker who probably should have been in a long time ago. Sterling Sharp and Jim Tyrer. And if you don't know the story about Jim Tyrer, look it up. It's a wild story, heartbreaking story, tragic story. But if you get a chance, read, or just do a quick Google search on Jim Tyrer, Tyrer. Okay, so let's get to it. I'm going to kind of go up to the top unless something pops at me. I'm just going to try to see what's on your mind. Once again, thanks for tuning in to this YouTube live. Leave a comment or question. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I'm getting up there. I'm over 10,000 now. It's been a slow grind. I started this thing. I know if it probably says I started in like 2012. I really didn't, as far as 49ers content. But This summer is when I first started doing this, and I've had fun doing it. I've been very appreciative of all the support you've given me. So thank you so much in advance, and thank you for everybody who's tuned in right now to watch this. Okay, so let's kind of go. I'm just going to tick stuff off here. Um, who do you think the 49ers will look for defense and free agency? Um, I think the first domino to fall will be with Dre Greenlaw. If Dre Greenlaw is back on the team, I don't know that the 49ers do a whole lot else in free agency. I don't know that they'll have to do a whole lot else in free agency as far as from a defensive standpoint. I don't know that they're going to go out there and make a big splash on defense. They tried that a couple years ago with Javon Hargrave. And, frankly, that didn't work out the way the 49ers wanted it to work out. Um, when you look at what the 49ers would want from, last year, they went out and they got Leonard Floyd, they got Yetur Gross-Matos. Will those guys be back? I would assume so, unless they're able to get, a big time defensive lineman to take their spot. One guy to keep an eye on, I think he's going to be too expensive. And this would almost have to be if the 49ers don't re-sign Dre Greenlaw, it would be Jamie Sherwood from the Jets. He's a 4-year veteran, played some good football for the Jets as a linebacker. Obviously, Robert Saleh knows him very well. And so that would be one guy to kind of look out for as far as defense. DJ Jones is somebody that's out there because the 49ers look to get a defensive tackle. 100% they could. The question is, what is DJ Jones' price tag going to be? How insistent will the Broncos be on bringing him back? And so, those are two names, two guys that obviously Robert Saleh is very familiar with. As far as the defensive tackles that they already have, Malik Collins, I'm sure will be back. Jordan Elliott, I think, will be back. Those are good pieces to have. But I mentioned Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. Gross-Matos for years could save about $3 million releasing him. So I don't know that his spot on this team is guaranteed, especially depending on what the 49ers do, what they're kind of plan to do as far as the free agency adding defensive line. But clearly, defensive line is a spot where they have to look to add people. Offensive line, defensive line, those are areas where the 49ers will address. I would think with 10 draft picks, you could be looking at the 49ers selecting 2 defensive linemen fairly early in the draft. It wouldn't shock me to see them use 3 of their 7 picks or 3 of their 10 picks on defensive linemen at some point. Right now they have 7 picks within the top 4 rounds of this draft. So defensive lineman is an area where I think they can definitely add people, not only add bodies, but guys who can compete, not necessarily guys who can contribute immediately. I think the advantage in drafting defensive linemen is that 8 defensive linemen play during the course of a game. Also, you have injuries. So you're going to need 10 defensive linemen through the course of a season. Whereas, if you're lucky on the offensive line, you might need only 5 offensive linemen. Obviously, with the 49ers last year, they ran into some injuries. They needed a lot more than that. They needed more. There was no way for the 49ers to build the kind of depth on the offensive line last year where they could just plug guys in late in the season who are with the team all year, because that's not – teams don't keep as many defensive or offensive linemen as the 49ers needed through the course of the season. That's why they had to go out late in the year, get guys on practice squads, and end up playing them a good amount. Okay, so that's a question about free agency. Tony, thank you very much. Kittle contract talks for extension. Yeah, I don't expect any real contract talks or any news on George Kittle or on Brock Purdy for a little bit of time. It's just not the 49ers MO when a guy is under contract to get that deal done, to get any kind of extension done at this point in the offseason. Now, if a guy were scheduled for free agency, I look back at, for instance, Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018, after the 49ers got him, they faced a deadline. That's why, they ended up signing him in February, but the deadline was you either sign him before the start of free agency. Well, but first off, if the 49ers did not get a deal done with him, they probably would have been forced to franchise him because he was scheduled for free agency. So in the case of Purdy, he's under team control for the coming season. Same with George Kittle. He's under team control for through this season. So there's no strict deadline as far as they need to get something done with either one of those guys. But so that's why nothing's been happening on that front, either Kittle or Purdy. But, is George Kittle a candidate for a contract extension? Absolutely. And it can work for the 49ers in the sense that because if he does sign a contract extension, it could have a way, it would, in essence, lower George Kittle's cap figure by giving him more upfront money. The prorated signing bonus would be spread for salary cap purposes over the life of the new years added. So right now, with George Kittle scheduled to make $14.4 million in base salary, that number and a salary cap figure of $22 million, that could be limited or reduced by quite a bit. So to me, it makes sense to sign George Kittle to a contract extension, even though he's getting up there. He's 32 years old, or will be 32 years old this season. He certainly hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. Let's see here. Oh, there's a trade Purdy for Myles Garrett. Well, yeah, the problem with I know this is in jest, but the problem with trading Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett is now, aren't you the Cleveland Browns? In other words, what do the Cleveland Browns lack? A quarterback. What would the 49ers lack if they traded Brock Purdy? A quarterback. So, yeah, don't think that that's going to happen. Let's see here. Just kind of going through this. Oh, got a lot of comments. Thank you so much for tuning into this YouTube live. I really, you know what? Okay, so there's a question about Mahomes being distraught about the Luka trade. I don't really follow the NBA all that much, but certainly, where was I? I was I think it was Saturday night after I watched a college basketball game, St. Mary's beating Gonzaga. I learned about that, and even I knew that was a big deal. And then, of course, the Warriors pull off the trade on Wednesday night, getting, who'd they get? Jimmy Butler in exchange for Andrew Wiggins and some others. So anyway, that's my NBA talk for the day. Do the 49ers have a chance at getting Myles Garrett? Okay, so yeah, I'd say so. They do. And I know that the 49ers consider all this stuff, and they have been big players. They have taken some big swings, whether it was replacing Joe Staley with Trent Williams in a trade, whether it was a team that really you couldn't say the 49ers had a weakness at running back, because they always managed to find productive running backs, but still out of the blue, it's Christian McCaffrey coming to town. they've been involved in trade talks. You learn after the fact. You know, they were going after Matthew Stafford to a degree. So other things have come down. They signing Javon Hargrave, that was a big splash at the time. Didn't work out the way 49ers had hoped it would, or certainly Javon Hargrave hoped it would. But by the way, just the update on Javon Hargrave, he will be available as a free agent. He signed, a long-term contract with the 49ers, and Javon Hargrave basically came to an agreement on a new contract that enables the 49ers to release him with a post-June 1 designation, which means that they realize some gains or they create some room on the salary cap this year. 49ers could re-sign him if they want, but he's not just a free agent in the sense that when another team signs him, he does not apply to the compensatory formula for the 49ers. So him signing a big contract with another team, or him just signing a contract with another team, will not at all help the 49ers for the 2026 draft when it comes to compensation. So the question is about Myles Garrett. I can assure you, 49ers have talked about it. Robert Saleh has talked about it. John Lynch, Tariq Ahmad, Parag Marate, RJ Gillen, everybody, Kyle Shanahan. What the 49ers have to determine is whether it really is in the team's best interest. Now, I'm sure they'd have to give up the number 11 overall pick in the draft for Myles Garrett. That's not a big deal. What I think is probably the bigger deal would be that whichever team Myles Garrett goes to, I mean, you can look at his contract and it's not huge what a team would inherit on that contract. But I can't imagine Myles Garrett, who has requested a trade officially from the Cleveland Browns, can't imagine that he would just say, trade me wherever I go. I'm going. I'm happy. I would think that his agent would request or demand that whichever team acquires him doesn't just have him for the 2025 season and the 2026 season. I would think that what would have to come along with that would be a financial commitment that would make Myles Garrett one of the, if not the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. So it would almost, I think it would come with the new team giving him a 4-year extension or whatever it is, 2 years beyond. That would make him, the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. So that's my thought there. So it's not just the draft pick compensation getting him from the Cleveland Browns. It would also be rewarding him with a contract that kind of exemplifies what he means as a football player. Okay, what else do we have here? Do I happen to know where the 49ers are in terms of finalizing the coaching staff? I don't. The Clay Kubiak situation, which Kyle Shanahan telegraphed, some time ago, I still think that that's in the works. I don't know what they've done as far as satisfying the certain aspects of that to make that official. I don't know if the league is not happy with the 49ers for going ahead and announcing that before checking all the boxes. The other thing is D'Angelo Hall interviewed with Kyle Shanahan this week for a spot on the coaching staff. D'Angelo Hall, longtime cornerback in the NFL, 14 seasons in the NFL, spent the previous 2 years with the Carolina Panthers as an assistant secondary coach. So as I've noted before, and I haven't heard anything different, I don't expect Brandon Staley back on the team. I just checked 49ers website and he's still listed. So there's nothing official as far as Brandon Staley not being on the 49ers coaching staff this season, but I just don't expect that to happen. So the big pieces, obviously, for the 49ers coaching staff that have fallen into place: Robert Saleh, defense coordinator, and Brant Boyer as special teams coordinator. Let's see here. What we got here? Here's a question. Do you think it's more likely that the players address trenches or skill position in the first round of the draft? What is more likely? I think what's more likely would be, and I'm not going to, I would go trenches, but I'm going to be even more specific. I'd say what the most likely scenario for the 49ers at number 11 overall would be a defensive lineman. And I think there are plenty of guys to choose from skill players. I don't see it being a running back pretty clearly. I don't see it being a quarterback. I don't see it being a wide receiver. The one spot, and I'm sure there's going to be questions about this as well. The one spot where I don't think it's a stretch, and if you've seen my latest mock draft, you know where I'm going. I don't think it's a stretch at all that they would take Tyler Warren at number 11. And the reason I say that, which I kind of outlined on an earlier video as well, is that the 49ers are always looking for matchups that they can exploit. And is he a backup tight end? No, I think he's a starting tight end, even with George Kittle. I think the 49ers have, they're one of the few teams in the NFL that have used a fullback. Last offseason, they were ready to not use a fullback anymore. I mean, they had a hard conversation with Kyle Juszczyk. Well, they still this season after Kyle Juszczyk, they brought him back on a new contract. His contract is big this year, at least relatively speaking, for fullbacks. And the 49ers already showed us what they wanted to do with this contract last year. So they've been a 21 personnel team with 2 backs, 1 tight end. I could see them easily transitioning to a 12 personnel team, 1 back, 2 tight ends. And Warren is the kind of guy that can line up in the backfield. He can line up all across the formation. He can kind of dictate where defenses go. Okay, they have 2 tight ends on the field. How do we treat him? Do we run base, defense, nickel? And if they go and defenses go nickel, now the 49ers have a size advantage. They can run the ball more effectively. Tyler Warren also has wildcat capabilities. He's a high school quarterback, all that stuff. And I just think the matchups would be something that Kyle Shanahan would love to be able to incorporate into his offense. So, that's my guess. If the 49ers were to go skill position, Tyler Warren is a very good option. Probably a heads up on my future mock draft. I don't know if I'll have 49ers selecting Tyler Warren, because I'm starting to think that Tyler Warren won't even be there at number 11 when the 49ers pick. So anyway, there's that. All right. Thank you for that question. What do we got here? Here we go. So someone tried drafting Warren at 11 in my recent mocks, and it's been a creative endeavor for sure. Good. I think that's good. Yeah. No, it's fun to talk about. The mock draft is, you should have fun with it. And there are some people who were really angry, that I took in my mock draft, that I took Tyler Warren for the 49ers there. There was one person said, if the 49ers take Tyler Warren, I'm done. I'll never be a fan again. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting take. Okay. Anyway, let's see here. Patrick Willis should have been a first ballot. Longevity is so overblown criteria, especially when you're an All-Pro for 7 years. Yeah, I was surprised. At the end of the day, first ballot, whatever ballot, it's He's not a big deal. And I was a person. Well, first off, Patrick Willis he wasn't even a finalist his first 2 years. So he never made the top 15 his first 2 years of eligibility. And so Patrick is someone that I have a very good relationship with. I talk to him quite often, and he was so easy to deal with. And as I kept him updated on kind of my thoughts of the Hall of Fame process, the thing that made it so easy and so rewarding for me is that Patrick Willis was just like, I'm a young man. I'm in no hurry. He was so laid back. And I think there was a part of Patrick that really didn't understand the whole idea of the Hall of Fame, just what the gravity of it, until his former teammate Brian Young went in and Patrick went to Canton and he saw it and he realized, wow, this is a big deal. Let me tell you this story about Patrick Willis. You guys will eat this up. This was phenomenal. So he was a finalist. I'm trying to think now. I think he was a finalist. Forget if he's a finalist for 2 or 3 years, but not last year, but the year before. We have our meeting of the final 15, and one of the linebackers who was up, and he'd been up for many, many years, Zach Thomas. Well, before this was, months before we have our Hall of Fame meeting, Patrick Willis is a finalist, Zach Thomas is a finalist. So they're kind of going up against each other, right? Because both play essentially the same position. And I fully realized that there are a lot of voters who think that Patrick Willis was better than Zach Thomas and would vote for Patrick Willis. I'm also very aware that there are a lot of voters who will vote for Zach Thomas before Patrick Willis because Zach Thomas has been waiting longer. So when I talked to Patrick Willis, he was like, I told him, I go, you know what, it's not a sure thing. I just think that, with you and Zach Thomas both on the ballot, it's difficult. You both probably won't get in, and people are going to have to make a decision between you or Zach Thomas. Patrick Willis says to me, he goes, well, Zach Thomas should go in first. And I go, why is that? And he goes, well, he's been, he was one of the guys I looked up to when I was a young player. Always respected his game. I'd like to, I wish he would go in before me. And I was like kind of blown away. This was just me and him talking. Well, a week or so before we have our meeting, I called Patrick and I said, hey, remember what you told me, whatever, a month or two ago about Zach Thomas? And he was like, yeah. And I go, do you still feel that way? And he said, I do. And I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't I, in my presentation to the other voters, tell them what you say about Zach Thomas and how he should go in before you? And Patrick was all in on that. So I presented my presentation of why Patrick Willis should go into the Hall of Fame. And I thought it was very convincing that he should be the guy. And then other voters chime in. And everybody, there was 4 or 5 people was like, what are we missing with Patrick Willis? He should be in. He should have been a first ballot guy, this and that. Other guys chime in. And I didn't tell anybody what I was going to do. And when you present someone for the Hall of Fame, you get the first word and then you get the last word. And so earlier, Armando Salguero, who covers, who was presenting Zach Thomas, reeled off a list of like 7 guys who played against Zach Thomas, offensive linemen, who endorsed Zach Thomas for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So when it comes back to me, I said, hey, earlier you heard Armando reel off a list of, high profile NFL people who support Zach Thomas for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I said he missed one person. Patrick Willis supports Zach Thomas for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and basically said, and I wrote about this later, but I said, Patrick believes that Zach should get your vote, and so he's going to make this real easy on you. Vote for Zach over Patrick. That's from Patrick. That's not from me. I would love to stand on the table and tell you why Patrick needs to get in this year. But all I ask is just keep Patrick in mind next year or however long he's on the ballot. And when I said that stuff, I started getting text messages from other voters. I saw, mouths open that had never been done before. And so for all the people, and I kind of had to bite my tongue for a while, who were upset that Zach Thomas got in over Patrick Willis the 1 year, now you know why. Because Patrick Willis did something that no one has done, and that was support another candidate, someone who he was in competition with. So it was kind of a neat scene this summer, going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and seeing Patrick Willis with Zach Thomas having a great conversation. So hope you enjoyed that story. All right. Do you think there's anything Purdy can do better in a rainy game? Gosh, that's a tough one. I think all quarterbacks struggle in inclement conditions. Does Purdy struggle more than others? Well, heck, look at the NFC or the divisional round game. It was rainy, right? 49ers and Packers. Jordan Love was the one who threw the 2 interceptions in the fourth quarter of that game that turned it. Is there anything? Well, there's probably what they can do better is probably run the ball better in rain, and then be able to use maybe play action or catch the, I don't know. That's a good question. His hand's not going to grow anymore. The grip on the ball, he's not going to change the grip. I think he did try wearing gloves, right, for one of those games. I don't know. I don't know. That's a difficult question. If you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments here. But I don't know. Let's see here. How much do you estimate the cost of getting Drew Dahlman in the building? So that's a reference to something I posted. Go back and we'll watch it here on YouTube. I did say if the 49ers were to make a big splash, if the 49ers were to pay for one player in free agency off another team, my recommendation would be Drew Dahlman. Does it make sense to pay a center $18, $20 million a year? That's very much up in the air about that. So that's probably the number you're looking at. Let me just take a quick glance here of where Dahlman could fetch. And to me, this is the reason I mention him. So let's see here. So he's a 4-year guy, unrestricted free agent. I don't think he played much as a rookie. It's just really difficult to find offensive linemen that can step in and play immediately. And it's certainly no guarantee that if you take one at number 11, he's going to be a good player immediately for you. Who weren't good players immediately for their respective teams in 2024? The 7th overall pick, the 11th overall pick, the 18th, the 20th, the 25th, the 26th, and the 29th. All those numbers I just cited, those are offensive linemen who were selected in the first round. J.C. Latham, Olo Fashanu, Amarius Mims, Troy Fotano, Jordan Morgan, Graham Barton, Tyler Guyton. The only first round picks that were really good players, Joe Alt and Talis Fuaga from the Saints. Okay. But there were, Pooney graded out as the best offensive lineman rookie from the 2024 draft. And he was chosen 86th overall. So that's why I think that if you're going to spend money, if you're looking for an immediate upgrade and you're confident he'll give you an upgrade, free agency might be the way to go. Unfortunately for the 49ers, fortunately for offensive linemen, when a good offensive lineman hits the open market, he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid a lot of money. He's going to get overpaid. I think Aaron Banks will get a lot of money in free agency. People scoffed at me 2 years ago when I said that Mike McGlinchey was going to get a boatload of money. Guess what? He got a boatload of money. If you're a starting offensive lineman and you're youngish and you hit free agency, you're going to get paid. So when you draft offensive linemen, don't expect an immediate dividends. It might take several years for that to happen. That's why I think offensive line is kind of a long-term, long game as far as drafting someone and then developing them. And then 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you're getting a good player. Whereas I think the reason I made that comment earlier about the trenches is that with the defensive line, you can get a guy almost anywhere, in the first 2 days of the draft who can immediately step in and help you, because you can take a specific trait for a defensive lineman and find a good use for him as part of a defensive line rotation. Whereas offensive line is a completely different beast, and it's a lot more difficult to find an offensive lineman in the draft. And just because you take an offensive lineman at number 11, I'm not sure there's any greater chance of hitting that. I mean, theoretically there should be, but you can take the same kind of player later, second, third round. Let's see here. Speaking of the defensive line and Elliott and Collins, do you see the 49ers drafting premier defensive linemen, and who? Yeah, I mean, premier to me would mean that it'd be with the number 11 overall pick. And so, 49ers pick 11 overall, then I think it's 43. You can get a really good player, and it might develop into a premier guy. And I've seen certain draft experts who have said that you can basically get the same player in this draft, whether you're picking 20 or whether you're picking 60. There's a lot of depth in this draft at different positions. But if we're going to focus in on number 11 overall, Abdul Carter might be the best player in this draft. He's not going to be there. Mason Graham probably won't be there. I don't think he's going to be there at number 11. Now you're looking at Michael Williams from Georgia, edge rusher. Jalen Walker from Georgia, edge rusher. You're looking at Mike Green, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, although he's kind of small. I know a lot of people are on the Walter Nolan train. Derek Harmon is a guy for Oregon. Is that an 11th overall pick? My first mock draft, I had the 49ers taking Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M. Very underwhelming stats through his 4-year career, or I guess his 3-year career, but someone who has all the traits. I think a lot of those guys come into play. Would it be better for the 49ers to be able to trade back from 11, pick up another, say, second round or a second day pick, and then get one of those guys that I mentioned? Would that be a better play? It might be. The problem is, in order to trade back, you need a trade partner. And if a team believes, hey, we can get the same guy where we're standing right now, teams have to fall in love with someone to trade up in the first round to get that person. So, theoretically, we could say 49ers should trade back, but you need a trade back partner. So those are some of the names. I hope that answered your question there. Dude wants to know, will Kyle get fired if the 49ers, where'd it go? Man, we got a lot of comments there. I better start zipping through this stuff. Where was it? It was basically, will Kyle get fired if the 49ers miss out on the playoffs? I mean, tell me how they miss out on the playoffs. Are there injuries? Does the locker room, does he lose the locker room? I don't think, frankly, I don't think Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch are on the hot seat entering this season. What they've done and the way how smoothly the organization has run since they got here, when you think about the issues that the organization had before that and how unsmoothly it ran, even during the three good seasons of the Harbaugh era. I don't see anyone on a hot seat unless something unforeseen happens, and that would be a lot of times. I think you kind of feel you get that sense walking in the building that things aren't right, that it's not solvable, it's not correctable. And certainly when you talk to the players, the frontline players, the leaders, you don't get that sense in the 49ers building. So hot seat, no, but I always use the caveat as, let's see how it plays out and what are the reasons they didn't make the playoffs this coming year. And just, I know it's kind of it's vague, but it's kind of the vibe too. You can get the sense when it's over for somebody. And I think the advantage that Kyle Shanahan has is that his message I shouldn't say never. His message hasn't gotten old because his message is always renewed. It's not the rah-rah, let's win one for the Gipper. It's not the same message over and over again that guys get tired of hearing. It's a very pinpointed message that he has, that he caters to that specific time. I've asked Trent Williams, what is it about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch that you like so much? But what is it about Shanahan that you like so much? And he said he's always present in that he constructs his message to the team based on what he is seeing at that point, specific ways to improve at that point. So that's how you keep the message fresh and relevant. Here we go. Kittle mentioned on the Kay Adams show that his agent and the Niners are in talks. Oh, I will have to listen to that. Thank you so much for doing that. So that's I think that's good news. Obviously, that's good news for Kittle's the prospect of him remaining with the team long term. Let's see here. What do we got here? Do you think another team would want to sign Purdy? Well, Purdy's not a free agent. So there goes that. No, I mean, would another team want to sign him? I'm sure they would. There are a lot of teams that don't have quarterbacks. But Purdy is not a free agent. And then it's like, okay, great. 49ers don't pay Purdy big money. Now they don't have a quarterback. Here, there are two types of teams in the NFL. Teams who are stressed financially because they've paid their quarterback a lot of money. And then there are teams that are envious of those teams because they don't have a quarterback to pay a lot of money. So 49ers would be back in that realm of looking for a quarterback when they feel like they have their quarterback. Would be looking at Okay, let's see here. Let me see if I understand this. Sometimes other teams sign guys early who are under team control, but would be looking at an extension. Why do you think the 49ers take some time with it? I'm just trying to think who. Well, all the guys that they've signed have been under team control. Think about the big money contracts the 49ers have signed. George Kittle, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, Brandon Ayuk, and this year, we assume Brock Purdy. So all those guys that they've signed were under team control and who had no outside negotiating power. The one big money guy that they re-signed who wasn't under team control was Trent Williams. And he was contemplating signing with the Kansas City Chiefs, by the way, before the 49ers. And he hammered out that deal. What do we got here? NFL needs to change the salary cap system similar to the NBA. Teams should be able to keep their players. You know what? I don't mind the salary cap the way it is now. I think it's worked for nearly 3 decades. So I don't know. I think the NFL game is probably stronger because of the salary cap. Let's see. What else do we got here? We've been going at this for almost an hour, so we'll just cut it off at it's more than an hour. No, about an hour. Let's see here. Talked about when does trading players begin? Well, trading players, teams can engage in trade talks, but it just can't become official until I believe it's March 15th. But teams can have handshake agreements in principle in place. So March 15th is when all trades can become official. Let's see what else we got here. Pay Purdy, like the guy who pays the bill says the market is the market. Center or defensive end. I'm not sure what that is referring to exactly, but I don't know that the 49ers can select a center in this draft who would be an immediate starter. My guess is either the starting center for the 49ers for 20. I mean, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. Second round pick, it's possible. But I think that my guess would be I just don't know if the 49ers select a center in the draft. It would have to be it'd have to be second round, I would think, or else the starting center for the 49ers for 2025 is already on the team. Did Josh Williams, did our scout take the interview with the Jags? I don't know that for sure. There's no reason for Josh Williams not to take that interview. I would, yes. Let's see here. Is Moody 100% gone? No, he's not 100% gone, but I would expect there to be competition that he would have to win this offseason. I don't think the 49ers are, could be wrong. I don't think the 49ers are going to release him before the offseason program or anything like that. Genty, at number 11. No, not when you have Christian McCaffrey, not when you have Isaac Rindo. I don't see that one. Let's see here. Warren would be a good pick. Let's see, Warren. Somebody asked me if I'm enjoying YouTube. I am enjoying this. I hope are you enjoying it? I'm going to kind of zip through here. I'm sorry. I'm going to be skipping a lot of questions here. I think I'm at the very bottom. Let me just kind of, there's someone says Hennessy, Nugent, Zakel versus Brindle. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is that, they signed Hennessy to a 2-year deal. he has starting experience in the NFL. He's had some injuries. 49ers liked him coming out of college. Hennessy, Nugent was around. Zakel, yeah. I mean, I would think that more than likely the starting center is going to come from that group. And let's face it, Brett Brendel is the leader in the clubhouse. He's the guy that is the most likely to be the starter because he was a starter last season. I'm not saying the 49ers cannot draft someone or cannot bring in someone from the outside, but I've stated this and I'll stand by it. I think it's a lot easier said than done to acquire a starting offensive lineman unless you're willing to pay the big, big money. For instance, Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks will be a starter in the NFL next season. I just don't know who it's going to be with. I don't think it'll be with the 49ers because I think that he's going to get a sizable contract. So if a team is willing to pay big money, whatever that is, 8 to 18 million, you can get a starting offensive lineman. Yeah, somebody, I don't know where this came up, but yeah, Debo wearing the AJ Brown jersey. Yeah, I mean, he's really close. He's a good friend with AJ Brown. Good gesture, and yeah, they do share the same age. And remember, they signed contract extensions in that same off season. So one guy's deal, AJ Brown's deal, kind of helped set the stage for Debo Samuel's deal. Yeah, 49ers don't pay offensive guards. In fact, this is absolutely crazy. But look it up. The 49ers have not had an offensive lineman who they've signed to a second contract off of their rookie deal. So a drafted offensive lineman, the 49ers have not retained on their team since Daniel Kilgore. Can you believe that? That was a long time ago. Daniel Kilgore. The one guy that, the way I worded it, the way I did, Colton McKivitz, they've signed him to a second deal. However, they cut him leading into his second year in the NFL. So he was off his rookie deal. He wasn't, didn't have the 4-year contract, but yeah, just not the 49ers MO to pay that kind of money. What do we know about the health of Mitch Wishnowsky? his status for this season, very much up in the air. Got the question earlier about Jake Moody. Mitch Wishnowsky, very much up in the air just because of the back condition, salary he's going to make. So 49ers could be in the market for, again, I don't know if they draft. I think they probably won't go down that road again, drafting a punter or a kicker. But there are certain guys out there who are kicking around who they could get to, at least for competition. And this year, I do believe that both, if Wishnowsky remains, both Wishnowsky and Moody will be tested, will be up against it, will have competition for those spots. Let's see what else we have. I think that's going to be it. Let's see, a question about international games. There's an Australia game. I think there's a report. There's a report out of Australia of who the Rams opponent is going to be. So that's not going to be the 49ers. And also, teams don't want to play division games overseas to give up a home game. And that home game for Australia would be the Rams. I do think that there's a chance the 49ers play an international game. Could be London, could be Mexico. I know they're doing renovations at Aztec Stadium in Mexico City. What I hear is Houston will have a Mexico City game, but it'll be later in the year. So that's a possibility. So there are some possibilities for the 49ers to play international game. Haven't heard anything concrete on that quite yet. Okay, so I think that's a good place to end it, unless something pops up quickly here. But thanks for spending an hour with me on a Thursday morning, a drizzly, rainy Thursday morning in the Bay Area. I appreciate all of your support. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, a little bit of a slow time, little lull here in the off season, but I would expect some stuff to happen here relatively soon as far as rounding out that the coaching staff and everything else. So anyway, thanks again for watching this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, uh, comment when it goes over, because I think all these comments disappear, right? I think they all disappear when it's logged on my YouTube page. But just want to thank everybody. And well, I think that is it for now.